My name is Richard Mulwa from the University of Nairobi, and I'm going to be talking about urban e-mobility transitions in Kenya, the challenges and opportunities. Now, one thing is that transport is quite important, and for mainly two reasons. That's moving people and goods, and also for employment. And the transport system in Kenya is mostly dominated by the internal combustion engines, that is IC, which have led to a lot of consumption of petroleum products. So if you look at the figure there, we consume about 85% of all imported products. Most of them go to transportation sector, with the retail pump prices or retailers consuming about 72%, and aviation consuming the remaining 13% of the petroleum products. But we have new technologies that are on offer and new opportunities for transiting from the current scenario of the internal combustion engines. And we have an alternative, which is the electric vehicles. Now, use of electric vehicles and hybrid cars is one of the main forms of energy efficiency in the transport sector. And if we look at what is happening in line with the global context and the national context, according to the Paris Agreement, COP21 of the climate goals, it was estimated that 22% of the global vehicle sales could be electric by 2025. Of course, this has not been achieved, and they also had projected that 35% of the sales would be achieved by the year 2030. Now, we also have at a national level a target to achieve 5% vehicle registration, electric vehicle registration by the year 2025. That's according to a national energy efficiency and conservation strategy of 2020. Again, this is a target that has not been achieved, and we will demonstrate where we are now as a country. We also have what we call the bottom-up economic transformation agenda of 2022 to 2027. And in that plan, the aim is to construct about 1,000 vehicle charging stations, and 700 of these are to be in the urban areas and 300 along the major highways in the country. Now, what is driving the adoption of e-mobility in the country? First, there's the reduction of fuel import dependence, which consumes a lot of the forex earnings into the country. But there's also the idea of great stabilization. Most of our energy is renewable now, and we have a substantial amount coming from the geothermal, most of which is not utilized at night. So between 11 p.m. and around 4 a.m. in the morning or 5 a.m. in the morning, there's a lot of energy that has to be released, or steam that has to be released into the atmosphere because it's not being used. There's also the idea of creation of green jobs, and also adoption of e-mobility will be a challenge to the country because of the demand in energy will be required to increase renewable energy generation in the country. There's also the idea of supporting climate and industrialization goals for the country, and it's also expected that the transport costs, once we adopt electric vehicles, is going to be reduced substantially. Also, with the current IC engines, we have a lot of air pollution, especially in the cities, and adoption of EVs is going to lead to an improvement in the air quality. So that is what is driving the adoption of e-vehicles. Now, currently, just over 8,000 EVs were registered in 2024. The figure has risen slightly to about 9,000. And this is about 0.2% of the total registered vehicles in the country. Now, the numbers, of course, have been increasing over time, but there's a challenge of few EV charging positions that have been installed in the country and none already along the highways. So if you look at the composition of the adoption of EV, 92% are two-wheelers, that's motorcycles. Buses would consist about 1%, and private cars would be about 2%. The rest is three-wheelers and forklifts. So the market is highly dominated by two-wheelers. So there is a need to also improve on the other modes of transportation. But there are challenges that are affecting the adoption of e-vehicles. Number one is the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure and ecosystem for all users. It's not safe, reliable, or accessible. Then we have lack of affordable tariffs, which are chargeable for EV owners or charging stations that are operated by the owners of e-vehicles. Then there is also limited capacity for building of electrical contractors or workers that are handling EV and charging installations. There is also the challenge of compliance with the requirements of the Kenyan Grid Code and relevant electrical installation standards. Now, also, we don't have separate metering arrangements made for both private and public charging stations. Now, we carried a small interview or survey in the country to try and determine what were the views of the people. And from this study that we carried out, a number of challenges came out from the people that we talked to. Either they said that EVs, there's a higher purchase price compared to the IC vehicles. Then the taxes and importation duty was high. There was limited charging infrastructure. There was low public awareness of the EVs, a lot of limited technical expertise, the high maintenance costs of the EVs, the performance concerns. So many people don't believe that the EVs perform equally as well in terms of power output compared to the normal IC vehicles. There's also the problem of financing when it comes to developing the EV industry in the country. There's also resistance to change. Many people are used to the IC vehicles, and many of them would resist that change. And then there's the potential of job losses. If we adopt a lot of EVs, it's likely that many of the people that are currently working on filling stations or gas stations are likely to lose their jobs. So that's what we got from the survey, and we plotted this to get to know where the biggest challenges were. And many people reported high purchase cost, limited charging infrastructure, and performance concerns. Those are the three which were sticking out. Then we also had, alongside that, we had low public awareness, lack of financing, maintenance costs, among the others that scored highly. But from that graph, you can see that we have high purchase costs, limited charging infrastructure, and performance concerns for the EV vehicles. Now, what opportunities do exist for e-mobility adoption? Now, the government has taken steps towards encouraging the adoption of EVs, and there is a reduction of excise duty from 20% to 10% if a vehicle is a full EV. In other words, it's not a hybrid. So in this case, it attracts lesser excise duty. We also have a specialized tariff of Kenya shillings 16 per kilowatt hour and 8 per kilowatt hour. This is during peak and off-peak hours. Now, you compare this to the customer or residential consumption per kilowatt hours is about 24 on average Kenya shillings. So there's substantial reduction here. Now, in terms of dollars, that would be the residential would be about anything 20 US cents to 22 US cents per kilowatt hour. Now, at the government level, we have the task force by the Ministry of Roads and Transportation, and they've already developed a national electric mobility policy. There's also a strategy that has been developed, and we have various legislations, regulations, and guidelines that have been developed to make sure that e-mobility is boosted. We also have EV charging and battery swapping infrastructure guidelines. And then this is especially for the two-wheelers who have to drop the batteries at specific locations and get new ones when the ones they have are fully spent. Now, again, we have incentives from the government. We have an electric vehicle exemption from the VAT. Currently, the VAT in the country is 16%, so we have those exemptions. Then we have excise duty exemption for locally assembled motorcycles. That's EV assembled. And then we also have electric vehicle batteries exemptions from both VAT and import. So whenever you import batteries, then you're exempted from that. And then we have what we call the completely knocked down and semi-knocked down vehicles, which have attracted a reduction of corporate tax. If a company is involved in any of these, then the corporate tax reduction is up to 15%. So a lot of effort has been put forth by the government to ensure that we move in the right direction towards adoption of EVs. So thank you very much for listening. I think that's a story about EVs in the country. And of course, we see future developments and a lot of developments going into the future. So once more, I thank you.